Bob, we've been watching you work this morning, and I actually just want to find out about your story. How did you get started working at the gate?
Well, my dad was a trainer. We lived on Long Island, close to Belmont Park, and I'd worked on the backstretch while I was in school. And when I got to college, an opportunity came up to work on the gate one summer. I got a call from Mr. Cassidy. He was the starter at the time. Started there, and I hate to tell you, that was 50 years ago. It's funny, this gate that we're leaning against is actually the first gate I ever put a horse in. It used to be down at Belmont Park. The old days, it was a wrestling match. We're all young, tough guys, and our goal always just to get the horse in the gate. Truth of the matter is, our goal should have been to teach the horse to follow and to trust us.
So you've done the gates the traditional way. When did you start looking at natural horsemanship at the gates?
It was about 25 years ago. I'd finally reached a position on the gate where I had a degree of authority. I had moved up, and I wasn't the starter yet, but I was working for a man who was very open-minded and was happy with me to search more information. And then Monty Roberts' book, The Man Who Listens to Horses, was out at the time, and he came to Saratoga and stopped by the gate and said, well, we have something in common. If you ever get out to Solvang, to his farm, please do. It was almost like doors started to open up. I mean, I was fortunate to work for some people that were open to new ideas, and they would allow me to go to these places and learn from these clinicians.
Bob, we've seen you work a little bit this morning, so I just want to find out a little bit about the process you go through with, for lack of a better word, problem horses at the gate. How do you start them? How long is the process? What way do you work with them?
It takes looking at the job through the horse's eyes and understanding how horses interact with each other. And we try to use that information, which is basically causing movement, to connect to the horse and have the horse begin to trust us as a leader. Once we create this movement and the horse is following better, then an obstacle like the gate becomes less threatening. Their curiosity kicks in, and they'll fidget with it and try things that they wouldn't try otherwise. That's the beginning of our contact with the horse, and we try to develop this relationship. So oftentimes the horse will resist. As they walk up to the gate, one of the common things they do is to sidle toward the inside to avoid going in the gate. So there are times where I'll use levels of threat. I'll start lightly, politely asking the horse to move, and I'll stare at the hip. And if it doesn't move, I'll possibly spin the rope if I have the rope in my hand. Or if it's a real severe case, I might even spin it enough to where it actually pops him on the butt. It's not a painful thing, it's just the thuck, thuck, thuck of it makes him kind of move. So with each attempt for me to move him, he'll get to remember the first signal I give, and it'll come down to the point eventually where he can just look at his rear end and he'll straighten himself up. The beauty of this is that, once again, it happens to our horses out at the farm. They move each other in such a fashion. They'll never hurt each other. They'll threaten, and they'll do it in an escalating fashion. They'll always ask politely, but eventually you get the response you want. You can cause the horse to move in all different directions that way, and that's the beginning of the relationship that makes the horse trust you and do what you want him to do.
You've worked with some pretty amazing horses throughout your career, and there's one that I just want to talk about, and that's Quality Road. Can you talk to us about that story?
Quality Road is a horse I didn't meet until after that notorious event in the Breeders' Cup where he wouldn't go in the gate, and it became a fight, and blindfold was applied, and he struggled with the gate crew for about 10 minutes. Todd sent him back to New York, and I got to meet him down at Belmont Park. And I consider him the poster child for this program because he suddenly had this terrible reputation. I mean, the things that were said about him, like, oh, he'll never run again, they ought to just retire him, he's claustrophobic, he's mean. None of those things applied to him. When I met him, I realized that this is about as nice a horse as you'll ever be around. And being able to use this new technique of movement, he bought into it right away. We took him out in the paddock behind the barn when I first arrived on a Tuesday afternoon and moved him around some, and he enjoyed it. It was a game for him. He enjoyed it. He was vibrant. And I looked at Todd, we looked at each other and said, we don't see a problem here. This looks like it's going to be all right. And sure enough, over a 4-day schooling period, he was perfect and really was never a problem again after that. Tradition dies hard at the track. There's a reluctance to try something new, a reluctance to fail at it. I would hope that in racing, we would create a program where even trainers could come in and learn more about this and maybe have a practical experience with it where they see it work, so they could see that the connection exists and the emotional change it makes in the horse.